So just like how I said in the last video, there might be situations where instead of uh, extending the earth up to create this kind of berm for your pathway, maybe you want to use something a little less intrusive and divisive in this landscape. So instead of it being earthwork, maybe you actually can figure out how to include a boardwalk kind of condition. So that way, again, we don't kind of divide this low point. So that's what this next video is going to show you how to do. So I'll show you again kind of the end product of how that's going to work, right? So we basically kind of decide whether these points have moved in the upward direction, and that kind of starts to indicate that uh, the original ones were going to a low point, and that's how we start to kind of subdivide our pathway and more of this kind of hybrid where, again, we're still maintaining in some areas that on grade pathway, but then in other areas where it gets starts to kind of go too low from the original one, we have a boardwalk instead. So let's again kind of go through that process. And again, we're going to build off of the previous script. So we've already done that part to kind of get it to that elevation versus what that original pathway looked like, right? So there's that one. And so we're going to use that information to kind of tell us if we need to add that boardwalk. And then from there, we get to kind of, we use that information to separate it. And then those points now go into our boardwalk, and then the other remaining points still go into our earthwork. So again, we're gonna kind of build off that last one. So this is the parts that starts to make our boardwalk. So let's go ahead and do that. So like I said, it's the same thing. So what we want to first do is, again, I can get rid of this part now, is that I'm going to take these points and start to analyze them a little bit more as well. So again, I'm going to give myself a little more real estate. And so I'm going to, again, kind of compare these ones with the last ones. So I'm going to go to my original points here. I'm going to go to vector and essentially create a vector from these points to my new points. And that's going to give me a vertical direction, whether it's going down or whether these are going up. So if they've gone up, that means essentially that we're creating this berm. So we want to take these values, these negative values, or take all these values and just focus on the positive one. So again, if I look at the original, and I can actually display that too. So let's go to vector, vector display. So the anchor, or actually I could probably use the new ones. So let's use that as our anchor, and let's use our vector to kind of determine. So you can kind of see which points went up versus which ones went down, right? So these ones all came in that upward direction. The rest went in that negative direction. So that's how we want to, again, kind of start to filter that information out. So the vector gives us the x, y, and z direction, but we only need the z. So we're going to go to vector, vector, and deconstruct that value. And now we're just stuck with the z values. So from here, we are going to filter that out. So I'm going to go to math, operations, and larger than. And I really just want to look at every value that's above 0. So I'm going to go ahead and enter 0. And now we'll be able to use the list dispatch. So I'm again looking at these points, looking at this pattern. And again, I just want to give myself a little bit more room. There we go. And again, it's going to show me all of them, but I only want to see those positive ones. So let's go ahead and even turn off the original ones. All right, so now we can see that these are just the points that have gone up. And then the rest will stay on grade. So those are the B components. And so I'm going to lock this real quick. And again, so the B is the ones that don't go in the upward direction. We want to keep those there. So I'm going to, again, use these highlighted components to replace it. So whatever this one's going into, I want this one to now go into. Now unlock it. And what's great is you'll see that immediately the topography alters that. So now we don't have that berm work going through it. And it's good because it is going to have a little bit of overlap for that boardwalk to have some kind of landing. And so now we'll take these points and basically kind of start from scratch. So we'll first go to curve and use the interpolated component to create a single path. And let's go ahead and turn this off for now so we can just see it a little better. Which ones are those? Let's turn that off as well. Okay, so now we're just left with like that pathway for our boardwalk. So similar to the other videos, we're going to take this interpolated curve, divide it by a decent amount of points. Let's go with 50. And we'll use again the parameters output to figure out the horizontal frame to know the direction in which to, the direction in which to move these points in either direction. So again, we're going to use the green or the Y direction from these frames. So I'll turn this off, go to vector, deconstruct, and now again we can kind of build off of that. So I'll go ahead and turn these off. And you might want to kind of think about what's that boardwalk. Is it still just something that has equal distance on either side, or is there something that kind of pulls out and gives kind of an extended view? So you can even start to do that. So let's look at those options. So again, I have the number of points or which is going in there. So I'm going to go to math, I'm going to go to sets, create a range of values. So stick between 0 to 1 because I'm going to use the graph mapper in this case. And I'm going to now go to parameters, input, graph mapper. And this is again just like the first video with creating a pathway on these surfaces. I'm going to use the Gaussian one. I'm going to double click and just say, you know what, they're going to at least go out 1. Actually, I'm going to say go out 3. And this one can be upwards of 4. So that way, like, they're still going to maintain that minimum width of 3 feet on either side, at least in this first direction. So let's go ahead and take a look. And we want to make sure that we do this in the correct direction. So the green, that direction is the positive. So I'm thinking of having this kind of extended part in this on this side. So that's actually going to be going in the negative direction as well. So I want to make sure that I keep that in mind. So I'm going to go to math again and multiply these values by something pretty small still. And now I can do move. So I'm going to move these points in the Y direction, but I do again want to use the negative. So I'm going to go to vector, vector, reverse, and use the amplitude to give that direction some actual length, which is coming out of my graph mapper. And don't see anything happening. Huh. If I did it this direction, am I missing something? $51, $51. Not sure why this is not giving me anything. Pretty sure it was the Y was the green one. Amplitude, right? I mean, let's see what if I just did something like this? Huh. Okay. Oh, so this is 0, 0. Why am I getting... Did I forget to do something? Oh, that's why. So this stays 0 and 1. This goes to 3 and 4. So that was complete oversight on me. So now we can do that. There we go. Now we do want to go in the reverse. Gets a little crazy, so let's go ahead and reduce that. It's not quite what I was hoping for. Let's try something more like this. We might have some issues with that, so I might just say forget it. Because it is going to be kind of tricky in that area. That's kind of interesting, but we can try, instead of 3 to 4, we could try 1 and 2. Make sure that it goes out 3. But yeah, I'm not sure if it's going to get us to that kind of output. So let's just default it to 3 in every direction. So, oh well. So we'll do it in that, and then we'll, again, I'm going to move this down and then copy and paste it also, but then well, let's do it this way so that way I can. So this is not my best showing, but we'll get there. There we go. So now we got it both in the positive direction and the negative direction to complete that. Now from these points, I can go ahead and turn this off and create our, again, 2 separate curves. So I'm going to do curve, interpolate. So I have that one, Control C, Control V to copy and paste it. Turn that off. So now we've got the edges. And unfortunately, we can't just close it and create a surface because there is still some slope to this. It's very minor, but it is there. However, what we can do is a couple different things. So we can just simply go to Surface, Freeform, and use a ruled surface. So I'm going to use this curve and this curve for that one to create that solid surface. We can then even extrude that up. So I'm going to do extrude, and the Z, and again our earthwork goes up 6 inches or half a foot for our on grade pathway, so we might as well do the same thing. So I'm going to do half a feet And you can see that it is 1/2 feet because that's where this one is. I mean, I can drop it down a little bit, maybe. Because that's the part for our grade. Here's our boardwalk. And you can see that it starts to get nice and flush with that. Okay, so there's the actual surface itself. If you want, I mean, other options is you can take that surface, you can go to Lunchbox, create some panels. So one option is to take that surface and again, kind of create it more like a boardwalk. So in this case, let's see if I can actually get this right. Let's try 5. Let's see where that goes. So that's that direction, which I actually want that to be high. I want it to be really high. And then do 1 in the other direction. So you kind of do it like that. It's a little distorted. The other kind of way you can think of it is that if you take the curves from either end here to create a point, that's a little bit nicer with, where it kind of stays nice and perpendicular throughout. So that's the other option to kind of make it more of a boardwalk. You'll still have to kind of extrude these and create them as separate things, which I've shown in other videos. So I'm not going to worry too much about it there. But here's our extruded surface. And then the last thing you can do, or at least one additional thing that would be good to do, is to actually create the railings and posts for this boardwalk. So I'll just keep it very kind of traditional boardwalk style, where I'm going to take these, both these curves, and I'll just stick with like the default 10 for now. I'll project them onto the surface, so points. So I'll use my, again, new surface over here to project those down onto. And that way now I can, let's just do it this way. So I don't really need to keep them enclosed like that or separate. So I'm just going to create a curve this way. All right, so there's our post. And then I'm going to also do in the other direction. So I'm going to take these, move them. I don't know what that's there for, but I'll keep it. In the Z direction. And we'll do this 4 feet. So it's starting at the bottom of the path, which is 1/2 foot. So this makes it 3.5, which is a little more ergonomic. And now we can even do the same thing of using those curves that we ruled and move them in that same distance that we did for those railings. So that way it'll match up nicely. If you want, you can even, again, the simplest way to do this that I'm going to show you is just to pipe these. So surface, pipe. You can see that you need a curve in the rail. So I'm just going to say, let's just go ahead and join those. So we'll go to curve, join. So that looks good, I think. Yep. So base curve, oh, so actually we don't even need the circle, which is nice. And then I'll just do these like point. Since it is looking for the radius, let's keep these decent. So point 125. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, that looks like a decent thickness. That way I can do the same thing for these curves. So there you go. Now instead of just curves, you got some actual surfaces for your railings. So it's that simple to kind of create this hybrid on-grade pathway with a boardwalk. And what's great too is you can see the existing contours of our new surface that's doing everything. That this is now no longer being divided by the pathway, but rather allows for it to still kind of drain underneath it. It might start to kind of tell you maybe you want to change your pathway a little bit more, which is cool. So it's going to have some lag to it, but let's try it. So I'm going to say move this point, and this point, and this point. Let's just move those over a little bit more. So that way they aren't on the low point of this. And you can even kind of take this and maybe extends out a little bit. I mean, it's not too bad in terms of the lag. It's really the contours that create the most issues. Oh, you can see that it's kind of converted the whole thing into a boardwalk now. So not sure why that happened, but it did. So let's see something real quick. Maybe we don't want to have it go out too much further. So yeah, just be kind of careful. Maybe if I just try moving that one a little bit. There we go. So that didn't affect. It's probably that point that's messing it all up. Nope, that one's messing it up too. So let's try. I'll have to look into why it's doing that, but you get the idea where you can get this to be very kind of responsive and integrated with the landscape a little bit more than the previous examples. So there you go. So now you know how to kind of combine both an on-grade path with a boardwalk type of pathway while maintaining those constraints once again. So there you go.